Welcome. Today we're exploring a significant topic, the idea that the Mass is a sacrifice, and what Scripture and early Christian writings say about it. Biblical evidence. To understand this concept, let's start with the Last Supper, when Jesus instructed his disciples to do this in memory of me. The original Greek phrase, "Touto poiet estan emen anamnesin," carries deep meaning. The term poiet can be interpreted not just as do this, but also as offer this. This same word appears over 70 times in the Old Testament, where it often relates to offering sacrifices. Furthermore, the word anamnesis implies a memorial that has sacrificial connotations. In the Jewish tradition, this phrase would evoke a sense of offering, especially when considered alongside other Old Testament references. Another significant New Testament passage is 1 Corinthians 10:14-21. Here, Paul contrasts the table of the Lord with the sacrifices of demons, emphasizing that participating in the Lord's table is akin to partaking in a sacrificial offering. This aligns with Malachi 1:7, where the table is equated with an altar of sacrifice. Hebrews 13:10 echoes this idea, asserting that Christians have their own altar, from which others cannot partake. Point 2. Understanding sacrifice. Some might wonder if saying the Mass is a sacrifice suggests that Christ must die again. It's important to clarify that sacrifice doesn't always involve death. In biblical terms, a sacrifice is fundamentally a gift. We see examples of non-bloody sacrifices such as grain offerings and wave offerings, where nothing is killed but something valuable is presented to God. The Mass embodies this idea. It's a living offering where Christ is presented before the Father, not a reenactment of his death. Point 3. Christ's unique sacrifice. It's also crucial to recognize that while the Mass is a sacrifice, it doesn't imply that Christ's death was insufficient. Hebrews 9:24-28 states that Christ was offered once and for all. Repeating his sacrifice would suggest a flaw in the original offering, unlike the animal sacrifices of the Old Covenant. Christ's sacrifice was perfect and eternal. As our eternal priest, he continually presents himself to God, symbolically appealing for us, as described in Revelation 5:6. Thus, the Mass isn't a repetition of Calvary, but rather a participation in the ongoing reality of Christ's self-offering to the Father. Historical perspective. So, when did Christians start viewing the Eucharist as a sacrifice? Interestingly, a significant majority of Christians today, about 75%, believe in the sacrificial nature of the Mass. This perspective isn't just a modern interpretation, it has roots in early Christianity. The Didache, a first-century Christian text, refers to the Eucharist as a thusia, or sacrifice. It encourages believers to gather for worship and offer a pure sacrifice. This aligns with Malachi's prophecy, which early Christians understood as a foreshadowing of the Eucharist. Clement of Rome, writing around AD 80, acknowledges the significance of those who offer sacrifices within the Church. Early Church leaders like Ignatius of Antioch and Justin Martyr also emphasized the unity of the Eucharistic offering, connecting it with Old Testament prophecies about pure offerings. Irenaeus of Lyons, writing in AD 189, further confirms this by noting that Christ instituted a new sacrifice of the New Covenant, fulfilling Malachi's prediction about a pure offering to God. Conclusion. In summary, the Mass as a sacrifice is deeply rooted in Scripture and early Christian tradition. It's a profound participation in the one eternal offering of Christ to the Father, not a repetition of his death. Understanding this helps us appreciate the richness of our faith and the continuity of Christian worship through the ages. Thank you for joining me on this exploration.